All right, welcome back to Statement Games Live. My name is Nathan. I'm joined with Mark. How's it going, Mark? How are you doing this week?
Doing all right. Another week in the books. Everything goes by fast. How you holding up?
Pretty good, pretty good. So this show is presented to you by Statement Games Inc., the most innovative alternative free-to-play fantasy sports platform operating in the gaming industry. For our gaming innovation, our platform has been highlighted on ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC. Mark, tell the audience a little bit about what we're going to go over in this show.
Look, we're two emerging entrepreneurs within the sports space. We got a lot of different kind of stories and some things that we need to kind of get off our chest on a week by week basis. So the way that I always kind of like to position this show is that if you're a sports marketer, content creator, blogger, vlogger, influencer, you just might have a little bit of fun with us here as you kind of learn more about what we're going through on a week by week basis. Of course, we kind of do our best to divulge and talk about some of the tips and tricks from a business perspective that seem to not be working for us, where we're falling short in various different areas, and just hey, just our overall experiences as entrepreneurs within the sports space. So hopeful that people can continue having a little bit of fun with us, and if there's certain topics that people want to learn more about or anything like that, drop a comment in the comment section and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into the gaming news this week. What do you got for us?
I mean, look, I feel like the subject matter has been beaten to death over the past kind of a couple of days here, but we'd be remiss by not kind of talking about it, especially from our perspective here. Look, we're coming off the Super Bowl, so a pretty significant game. I
Mm-hmm.
think that kind of has dominated the gaming news space in the past couple of days, and I guess from a game perspective, we really didn't have much of a showdown, or I guess the billing didn't necessarily live up to what was put on the screen, but it happens, and we did kind of spend a lot of time on this kind of last week. We kind of talked about how, look, you know what, don't be shocked if you kind of taking a look at some of the gaming numbers
Mm-hmm.
around the Super Bowl, and be remiss if those numbers didn't necessarily stack up from what you kind of saw in a non-pandemic type of a setting, such as 2019 and the 2020 NFL season.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I mean, we should count ourselves lucky. During a pandemic, we had pretty much a whole NFL season. There were some bumps
Yep.
and bruises along the way, but we made it all the way through and to a Super Bowl. So, we got that. And
Yeah. I it's look, it's we officially turned the page on the NFL season. There's a lot coming out in the gaming space here. I mean, we kind of talk weekly about the different things that are taking place in Connecticut. We've touched upon the things that are taking place in the state of New York. Michigan has launched. There's other things kind of in the works that plenty of stuff to keep our eyes on and see kind of what happens and what's been taking place here.
yeah,
Acquisitions are taking place within the marketplace. But I mean, in taking a look at the Super Bowl, I got a couple of different articles. I will go ahead and drop those articles in the show notes. But just some high level numbers that I thought were kind of fascinating. And I think when you take a look at specifically the statement game story and how we fit into the marketplace here, I feel, I'm not sure what your opinions are, but I feel that these numbers support our claim of
hmm
there being plenty of opportunities within the free to play space, the big buzz within the industry, and everything that everybody talks about and hears about is around sports betting, sports gaming. But again, in my opinion, there is a significant part of the marketplace that's not being addressed, and I believe full heartedly that those types of opportunities present, revenue generating opportunities for a lot of different kind of people. But touching on the Super Bowl here, um, about 23 million bet on Super Bowl 55. Um, uh, I'm
23
sorry,
million people.
23 million people. Correct, 23 million people. Look at this. I can't even take a look at my own freaking notes here. I'm jumbled up in the head and about too many different things here. But you're right. 23 million people bet on Super Bowl 55 for a total of 43 billion bucks, which is actually down 37% in comparison to last year's Super Bowl. Now, again, these are just high-level projections. We don't actually know if this is 100% accurate, but I'd like to think that the final numbers are somewhat near or around that number. When you take a look at the casino kind of business, people physically walking into a casino and placing a bet at a sports book, 1.4 million people went through that process, whether it was in Vegas or Atlantic City or any of the other casinos that allow sports betting to take place within their kind of establishment. So that whole process of 1.4 million people placing a bet on the Super Bowl is actually down 61%, or about 61% kind of from last year. I also thought it was kind of fascinating from a perspective. If you take a look at the number of people who are betting illegally, basically betting with offshore books or bookies or things like that. About 1.8 million people had done that. So you can actually still see there's still kind of a market for bookies, offshores accounts, so on and so forth. I mean, I would assume that these bookies and things like that here are extending credit to players and things like that, which is why, that's been taking place here. And still, there's also the fact that there's numerous states that just don't allow sports betting as of yet. So that's your only option if you want to bet on the Super Bowl, which is going to be through an offshore account or through a bookie. But 1.8 million people are projected to have done that, which is actually down 21%. I just kind of want to stop there here, because in your opinion, like, if people are betting illegally or offshore or through a bookie, how do people know what the hell they're doing anyway? I mean, it's not like, if I'm betting through a bookie that I'm kind of raising my hand and telling the IRS or somebody, hey, you know what, look at me, this is what I'm doing. Like how are people calculating this number in your opinion?
I mean, you can check.
Educated guess is
I would probably say educated
thing?
guess, probably economic factors, but also just because the government can't enforce doesn't mean they aren't public. Like Bovada is, offshore, but like you could check how many hits they have to their site.
I guess. Yeah.
I'm sure that they have even some public numbers as far as like the country they're run out of. It's just a matter of the government can't track the individual transactions to go after, individual for betting. They probably also consider it similar to the whole marijuana issue where it's not allowed, but they don't enforce it, kind of thing. So I'm sure there's ways of kind of getting some information on it that's not completely perfectly accurate, but is an educated guess.
I guess even from a hits perspective and things like that, like I don't see these other networks or sites sharing analytics data with people. Maybe they are. Maybe that's kind of part of it. I mean,
well, you share it with Google. Google knows all.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's a whole separate can of worms that we can kind of go down between the ethics of some of these companies potentially sharing data from third parties or anything like that, or helping some of these other establishments come up with some of these ballpark. Anyway, not that big of a deal, but just kind of wanted to throw that out there. I was interested, yeah. If it's illegal or if it's not necessarily something that's regulated, how the hell do they know? How'd they come up with that 1.8 million number and how that was actually down 21% from the year prior? What are you going to do? I don't know. Another comment. If you got a viable answer to that question here, I'd love to know about it here. So, hit us up and drop that answer in the comments section and, help us out like a little bit here. Then I also kind of thought it was no surprise. 7.6 million people actually, went through online legal sports books to place bets on the Super Bowl, which is up 63% in comparison to last year, which makes perfect sense. I mean, you have, states like Virginia and Michigan that just, they weren't around last year. So there's more, I guess, demand within the marketplace that is satisfied by legalized products, given, various different laws and regulations that have come on board since the passing of last year's Super Bowl. So
yeah,
from an industry perspective here. I think in that regard here, there really is no way but up on that subject matter.
I would be curious to know how many of those 7.6 million were first-time gamblers or first-time sports gamblers, and how much is coming from, someone not going into a casino or not using their bookie.
Yeah. But look, I mean, it reinforces a big part of the Statement Game story. It reinforces some of the points that we've brought up in weeks past here. And that's the fact that discretionary income or discretionary spending is down. I mean, we're living kind of like in a pandemic. There's, unemployment. There's various different things from an economic perspective that has consumers concerned or worried. So they're either holding discretionary income a little bit more closer to their chests, so to speak, in fear of not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring. And there's also a lot of situations here and where that discretionary income just simply isn't available within the economy as of yet. And as a result of that, these things are kind of like down. But I mean, look, I mean, I wish we could have gotten like a little bit of a better game here. And I have said this on numerous presentations and various conversations from I guess an investment collector perspective and things like that here. No way in any shape or form does this mean that these people don't like sports. It doesn't mean that they've lost interest kind of like, in football. It doesn't mean that they don't, want to compete. So, products like Statement Games fill that void. And where, look, you know what, there's just not a lot of opportunity for somebody to take anywhere between 50 to 200 bucks, 50 to 250 bucks and place it on a Super Bowl, bet or kind of like, buy those Super Bowl box pools and things like that. So Statement Games fits in nicely here, and that narrative fits in perfectly with what our value proposition is and why we feel that we'll continue to make some noise in this space, specifically in that vertical.
Yeah. And I would say that, gamblers, people who will spend money, still want to scratch that itch, even if they can't afford it. So Statement Games has the proper positioning to kind of fill that and allow them to still have the feel of gambling without, having to, break the bank or get the money out for that, as well as acquiring new people who want to play a game but don't want to gamble.
People want to compete.
Yeah.
They like competing and they like sports. Sports is, the ultimate, unifier of bringing kind of like, people to get together. Good times kind of like, in bed. People like, want to watch games. And of course, I don't want to steal somebody else's tagline or anything like that here. So let me see if I can phrase this in a way that I'm actually doing that. But these games are more fun when you're playing for something. How does that sound? Is that kind of like,
when you got something on the line,
yeah,
a little bit of competition.
Yeah.
Let's move on to our next topic here. You've got some interesting news in the creator space.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen anything kind of official, but I did kind of pick up on it on one of their more recent kind of podcasts, and where I actually believe we're as of last Friday that the full intention of Barstool was to go ahead and leave SiriusXM. Now, I haven't actually seen anything official, press release wise or anything like that. I'm not sure if you kind of saw something. I could be completely missing the boat on something here, but I think it's an interesting piece of news here. Here you kind of have a major sports media company, content creator, leaving a major platform. And obviously they're coming up with a variety of gaming or gambling related products and services, and how they have the ability to utilize their platform all in an effort to influence their customers and things like that into these types of products. And to leave a platform like, SiriusXM just goes to show that, hey, you know what, they're pretty committed to doing things like, on their own. And it's one of those situations here where you don't necessarily need a major platform like a SiriusXM or an ABC or an NBC to do kind of what you're doing. If you have creative content and you have the ability to entertain people and educate people in the same kind of breath,
Yeah.
There comes days when you actually don't kind of need it, and you see the same thing taking place with NFL contracts coming up here and things like Amazon TV and Apple and Facebook kind of becoming media players. So you're starting to see a lot of these alternative media players do some of these things themselves, or basically the content creators become the full blown out front end to back end platform themselves.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of where it really all started with the whole pulling the plug on cable back in the 90s, and everyone wanting to be able to piecemeal their content, and then that created your streaming services, and with the technology increase and just the availability and ability to enter in the content creation, like like even what we're doing, we're able to record, we're able to do all this ourselves. um it really democratizes the whole thing, so it makes sense that everything is kind of splitting off, and people that want to make the most of it are going to, especially if you have the platform like Barstool. Like, who knows, the Barstool, they might have their own streaming app coming soon.
Maybe they got the audience kind of for it. What I thought was kind of interesting in the things that I've actually seen, I'm pretty confident to say that guys like Howard Stern are kind of
Mhm.
getting, I guess, like close to about like 100 million per year to do what they do on the Sirius XM kind of platform. And now there's actually even reports that he might actually leave Sirius XM in favor of Spotify or something like that.
Mhm.
So what I was actually looking at or researching, Portnoy kind of made the point in where if Sirius XM made him kind of an offer that was in line with what say Howard Stern would potentially get.
Yeah.
Also kind of comparing himself like a little bit to the prestige in the podcasting spaces like a Bill Simmons. That he would kind of strongly kind of consider staying with Sirius XM, and it kind of makes sense here. But also keep in mind that when you're taking things like that here, I mean, there's a team, there's production, there's talent that you kind of need to pay off, which is all taken care of by Stern in that kind of regard here. There's
Mhm.
an extremely big commitment on time. I believe Stern is what he's at least kind of doing Monday through Friday, a couple hours kind of a day. And of course, there's other perks and things like that in terms of extended kind of time off. But it was just kind of interesting to see somebody start what he was doing with Barstool, which was literally a process of handing out kind of sports related newspapers within the Boston metropolitan area,
Mhm.
to fast forward 12, 13, 14 years later to commanding almost like a salary or a stipend that's comparable to Howard Stern. It's pretty inspiring, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, a lot of the people that get into the content creating space look to that as the end goal, I guess, especially if you want to keep your product your own. It does become, what you aspire to. It's not always attainable, but it's good to see that happen for someone for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So, hey, let's keep an eye on it and see what the heck kind of happens here. But
yeah.
good
Um,
stuff. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you want to go into what this means for Statement Games and our audience?
Yeah, kind of touched upon like a lot of this stuff over here, but it specifically kind of means that look, we've kind of come out, we shared these kind of these points before. We know that at least 40% of the casual, or the 40% of the sports fandom kind of market, if we kind of really drill down to casual fans, 40% of them are just not ready to spend money on real money kind of game related services. And that presents like a big opportunity for a company like State, because when you think about it from the perspective of, we're free to play a game that's got a different twist on fantasy sports, and
Hmm.
even though we're free to play, we are still giving consumers an opportunity to win something. So that competitive spirit can be filled without any kind of like risk to the consumer, and it also kind of like shows that the direction, whether you're, and we talked about this last week as well, whether you're kind of like Sinclair Broadcasting or a bar kind of like Barstool Sports, the ability for brands to become media companies to create content around their brand, all in an effort to drive acquisition, is definitely a trend that exists today and will continue to play a significant role in the sports gaming space, gambling space, kind of moving forward. You're seeing kind of happen with Barstool and driving people into their own proprietary kind of products and services. You see other things like pick kind of like a major network here, and then kind of like creating little spots and creating kind of like content all in an effort to push their kind of like fans or viewers into FanDuel, William Hill, DraftKings. I mean, name kind of product. I mean, you see kind of all the time, and you're gonna kind of specific shows around fantasy sports, around kind of gambling, that are featuring a specific platform or provider. They're all kind of taking place here, but the argument is still the same here. Real money gamblers are going to gravitate to those types of products automatically, whether you're Barstool or ABC or NBC or pick kind of like the media company of your choice here. They will also all do a good job in pushing loyal viewers into these types of products. But that still leaves a third component of people who are just simply not ready to do all of these things yet here. And by not kind of like addressing that market, we feel that there's revenue opportunities that are being left on the table, and that's where StatementGames fills the void.
Yep, absolutely. So what's new with StatementGames this week?
I'll go ahead and state the obvious, but so far the Super Bowl was the most highly trafficked game on the StatementGames platform as of yet. If you take a look at our monthly active user base, about 30% of that kind of user base here did participate in some shape or form within the Super Bowl. So that's something that we're currently kind of proud of here. Even with some of the technical challenges that we've been having in a couple of weeks here, we were able to kind of tack on an additional 3.5% in terms of new users coming onto the platform, which was more than double what we experienced the week prior. Of course, we can attribute that little spike to the Super Bowl. Let's see here, 36%. Oh yeah, another interesting point here. I mean, we've been doing a lot of work in areas of social media, all in an effort to create content that draws people into our platform here. So we added about 260 new Twitter followers in 1 week, which is almost like a 200% increase of what we're kind of like been doing week over week. Before that here, all organic, all people interested in picking up on the various different contests that we're running leading up to the Super Bowl and engaging with those contests and having like a little fun with those contests as well as the actual game that we actually had here. We got the Brooklyn Nets and the Golden State Warriors coming up here, so we'll have another little video specific to making picks. I'll drop that kind of like a link into the show notes. Hopefully people who are listening to this show be willing to check that one out as well. But other than that, it's another, like I said, I mean, these weeks crank by so fast. So another hectic week. I can point to retention and growth, and hey, we're doing our thing here as much as we can, as hard and as fast as we can.
Yep, absolutely. So with that, let's jump over nuggets of truth. I know you had something you wanted to talk about this week, so let's dive in.
Yeah, I mean, look, we always kind of like preface the show or introduce the show as one in which we have stories and where we talk about various different kind of like experiences and what we're kind of like going through, and some of it is great and some of it is hard to it's hard to digest. So I just kind of wanted to share a couple little things that they happen, they creep up. It happened to me kind of this week. It's something that can bother you, but when you put things into like a bigger kind of context, it's something you just got to kind of deal with and make sure that you're just kind of like keeping it in a completely separate compartment or bucket. So if we take a look at the StatementGames concept, it's definitely it's new, right? It's newish. Is that a fair statement. It's something that takes like a little bit of an educational process to understand before you're kind of like jumping into. But once you've kind of got it, I think it's fair to say that it's not. I'm not curing cancer here. At the end of the day, it's still kind of like a game. But when you take a look at the psychological profile of consumers in general, and this is applicable to statement games or any brand or business that you're looking to start that's kind of like leaning a little bit more towards the newer side. You kind of like have people from a innovative perspective that embraces your product first. You move from innovators to almost like early adopters. They kind of like participate, and you grow kind of like your brand from that there, and then the more mature market hopefully kind of embraces what you're doing and goes from there.
This
And I've
reminds
kind
me
of
of my marketing test from
yeah,
college.
it is. But when you kind of like one of the mistakes that I commonly make is where I sometimes confuse innovators with people who you would think just automatically support you.
Mm.
Does that kind of like make sense? Like, for example, I mean, your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, they're
Yeah.
always, no matter what you do in life, you would like to think that your wife, your girlfriend, those type of people are going to be in your corner and they're going to support you forever and whatever you kind of like you do. But kind of like in doing what we're doing, that's not necessarily always the case, and it can be a very hard pill to swallow when you come across those opportunities, especially when I guess the pushback on what you're doing is coming from somebody that you perceive to be within your immediate circle. Am I going too far off the cliff here, or is this kind of, making sense?
Nope, I follow you.
All right. So I wanted to position this little segment of Nugget of Truth here. When those situations come up, those people, they're still kind of in your corner, but you got to understand that they might not necessarily fully understand or get everything that you're doing, and you can't let that be a discouraging factor as to why you can't move forward here. And the stories that I would actually like to tell this weekend is that, look, I run a free-to-play sports gaming platform, and I had an opportunity to catch up with my dad the other day, and he was talking about how he was having a conversation with my uncle, his brother, and my uncle had made a comment that my cousin Jennifer would be contacting me because she's interested in placing a bet on the upcoming Super Bowl. And my dad had to explain to him that Mark doesn't run a gambling platform. You can't bet through statement games.
Yeah.
So I just got like a little bit of chuckle. But well, here's kind of like a situation where I love my cousin. I mean, she's great. Look, without sounding biased or anything like that here, it's not like she is a huge, sports fan, but she loves going to games and, gone to numerous sporting events with her. She's a lot of fun. She likes kind of like, doing things like that here. But here it is here. You kind of like, have somebody that you're extremely close to, and she doesn't necessarily really fully understand what it is that you do. So it's that type of stuff here, and where it kind of gets you down like a little bit here. But again, put it in a separate compartment or bucket, and don't just don't get too down on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see it too. It's hard for me sometimes to translate like what I do or how I make any sort of money off of, my sports website that I have or different avenues and ventures. Even to the point last year when, I published a magazine. I was selling a physical product.
Yeah.
And I was handing it out to family because, for me, it was like, oh my God, this thing is amazing. And I remember I gave a copy to my grandfather. Now, this is a rookie magazine based off the NFL draft for Dynasty Fantasy Football.
Yeah.
My grandfather has never played fantasy football, nor would even understand the concept of it if I told it to him. And he's flipping through it and reading it and just looking at all of these names, and he's a football fan.
Yeah.
He watches college. He's recognizing names, and then he's like, "Well, what? Where's this guy? Where's that guy?" I'm like, "Well, that's a
It's a
offensive
rookie magazine.
lineman. That's the these are for a very specific like set of audience." And he's just he's not part of that. And sometimes when you're not talking directly to the people who are educated on your product, it can be difficult. And family wants to support no matter what. Like my mom just wanted to take the magazine and frame it. you know
Yeah.
it's just a matter of um you got to speak. When you're marketing your stuff, you're speaking to people that understand you, and that doesn't always necessarily mean your family, or the people
Correct.
closest to you. It's and I run into the problem of trying to just talk to someone about something, amazing that I'm working on or cool that I'm working on. And it's like most of the time, unless I'm talking to my staff or someone very close to me in the same like you or someone in the industry, people just have no idea, and they don't understand. So it gets frustrating to even be able to communicate like, hey, I'm working on this project, it's going to do this, and it's going to provide this resource to my audience. And they look back at you and go, what are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah, it's something. But then again, you would also like to kind of like think. I'm sure this is not the first time that you've had a conversation with your grandfather on what it is that you kind of like on what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's where the frustration gets. This is, I mean, my cousin in this particular case, she knows that I have a business called Statement Games.
Hmm.
She's living in the year 2021. She has a Statement Games account. I mean, I know this because I made her sign up for it the second day that we actually launched.
Yeah.
She's played a game because this is what we've been doing within our family for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Whether it would be digitally or kind of like on paper. She's participated kind of like in that process, and it's not like she doesn't have access to a cell phone or a computer that has the ability to connect to the internet.
Hmm.
Typing in StatementGames.com is, in my opinion, not a fucking difficult URL to remember. If you really wanted to have an understanding of what it is that we're currently doing here, I mean, 5 minutes of your time is going to get you caught up here. It's going to answer 90% of the questions that kind of like come up here. And the other thing that kind of, I'm not sure if you kind of like run into it, but and again, your thing is very kind of specific, draft things like that, rookies and whatever. But would you take offense if somebody kind of like said, hey, you know what, cool magazine, you saw them kind of like flip through it and things like that, and then you watch them kind of like put in their bag, and then they picked out a different magazine called Sports Illustrated or ESPN Rookie Draft Magazine and said, hey, you know what? You should really be taking a look at this. This thing is
Hmm.
kind of like, great. I mean, have you ever kind of like run into situations or things like that here that kind of like really make you kind of like pull your hair out?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's trust me. They're definitely, as far as like, and I'm not even talking just in the sports realm, like as a graphic designer, as a website creator, people coming to me and asking me about like uh just other people's products, like other people's uh as far as like, hey, like I know that you do this, you make um websites and stuff, but like tell me about this other free program that makes a website for you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what do you want me to tell you? Like, I didn't spend $40,000 to go to college to be able to do that thing, and now you're going to
Yeah.
try and do it yourself
Because
because.
the other thing that happened to me, it's and again, this was from a neighbor of mine. Again, actually, I shouldn't say it, an old neighbor of mine. I was kind of like visiting. My dad still lives in the house that I grew up in,
Mhm.
kind of like as a kid. So all my neighbors are pretty much all the same. So these people that have lived on the block, I've known since I'm kind of like 2 years old. So I go over to like my dad's house on like a Tuesday night before like the Super Bowl or something like that, and there's a message for me kind of like on the table saying, hey, you know what? Do you mind giving Mrs. Such and Such a call,
Mm-hmm.
She's got a couple of questions for you about statement. She's like, all right, you know what, all right, the neighbors are picking up on kind of what I'm doing here, right? This is a good thing, who knows?
Yeah.
So I call him up, I call her up, and love her to death, kind of like, sweet, kind of like, person. And she's like, listen, she's like, with statement games and things like that. And, me and my husband, it's been hard to kind of, get out and things like that, snow on the ground, and bars, restaurants really haven't been, open or enough where we feel comfortable going out here. And, we really want to do a Super Bowl box this year for the Super Bowl. Is that something that we can do through statement games? I'm like, that's not really kind of like, what we do. But I don't know. I mean, I come across things all the time that I can keep my eye out. Just being polite, to be honest with you. If I'm being polite,
Right.
like, I'm just being polite. And she's like, yeah, if you don't mind, if you can kind of, touch base with us later in the week here, if you come across like a Super Bowl box pool, because, we're looking, it's just going to be me and such for the Super Bowl. We want to kind of, do something. We're Jets fans, so we really don't have kind of, a big dog in the fight. We hated Tom Brady, but, he's playing for a different team now, not that big of a deal. We'd like to kind of do something with the Super Bowl. So I was like, well, why don't you try statement games? Like, what we kind of like, do? She's like, well, I've always wanted to, but what is it? She's like, all right, this is nice. I mean, here's somebody that I've known since I'm 2 years old, and I've been doing statement games for a couple of years now. And my dad talks to all the neighbors about this stuff here. I mean,
Yeah.
It's nice that the neighbors have, taken an
Retain the
initiative
information.
to really, lock in and take a look at kind of what I'm doing here. So I explained to her what we're doing, list of props, statements, game props, player props, picking 10 of them, rank them in order of confidence from 10 through 1. Game plays out, get points for certain things. You're playing in leagues of anywhere between 8 to 10. And right, same spiel that I always kind of give. If you're interested in hearing the spiel, StatementGames.com. There's a 1-minute video on the homepage that shows what the game is, and then also maybe turn into making picks while I kind of give the same freaking spiel every week, and we'll continue to give it every single week until you people understand what it is that I do, So anyway, I give her like the whole spiel, and she says, yeah, she's like, and granted, this is an older person. This is not,
Well, but she understands what boxes are.
But she understands what boxes
sports betting. She knows some of the lingo. It's not like you're going to your 80-year-old grandma who's never looked at a phone before. And
asking the questions, what do I have to pay to get into these pools? I'm like, you don't have to pay anything.
Yeah.
You just log in through Facebook or Google. Well, how do I do that? I don't get it. Every single objective that you possibly could have come up with as to why she couldn't do it, she gave. So it brings it back to the initial point here. This is obviously somebody that's not an innovator or an early adopter.
Right.
And it's frustrating when you're trying to bring somebody that's not necessarily in that realm into your funnel, regardless of, how much they love you and how big of I guess, part of your extended family that they've been like, over the years. Their wall is up, until you actually, have received that bit of market maturity. Converting these type of people are extremely difficult. I don't make the recommendation that you spend a lot of time connecting on these people. Understand where they fit into the greater spectrum of things here. But what does piss me off, and what continues to piss me off, is how these people completely dismiss my product, but then again will ask me, well, can you get me into a Super Bowl box pool? Well, no, I don't give a shit about your Super Bowl box pool. This is not what I do.
Or to think that you
go to the local bar or something like that and get yourself into a, what do you want from me? Yeah. So anyway, that's almost like my my nuggets of truth for the week here.
Yeah, but what gets me is the person who thought you owned a gambling site, because if you owned a gambling site and there were like actual money coming in, you'd be like a couple millionaire, billionaire, something like whoever owns DraftKings and FanDuel or Bovada, like that person is set for life. You wouldn't be hustling. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, and I forgot this part. And they were asking for like free credits to bet with, like on the platform. Like, you understand the whole fucking thing is free. That's all you get is free credits.
60 free credits to join.
That's it. Yeah.
You should have just, stopped right there and been like, oh, just because you're a friend of mine, I'll give you 60 free credits.
But yeah. Granted, now in the case of kind of like my cousin, who probably going to flip out when she kind of hears this, but whatever. I mean, I doubt she'll actually even check this out anyway. I mean, that's the other thing too, right? You do all these podcasts for IDP guys and things like that here, trying to get core or key family members to check out kind of what you're doing and pay attention. It's always next week or whatever. So
my dad likes every post that ever gets posted on Facebook from my the IDP guy's Facebook account. Every single post. I don't think he reads them. I don't think he watches much of anything. He might watch one here or there. But he clicks the like button on every single one, and I get a notification for that every day.
But yeah, anyway, I mean, with my granted, this is a secondhand conversation. I'm not having, the direct conversation. I will bring this up the next time that I speak with him, and I will bust some chops.
Yeah, you gotta bust the
if
ball.
What I hear and can confirm is true. So I'll keep you posted on that. But anyway, the whole moral of the story here is that when you're doing things that are new and kind of like innovative, I think there's a tendency to get down on yourself here when friends, family members, people that have been what are perceived within your tight-knit circle for a number of different years, where they don't necessarily jump on board and kind of like participate in some of the things that you're actually doing with the enthusiasm that you expect them to go ahead and do. Which is also why when you are able, and we are, I am, and you are, we're locking into people who are embracing our products and services every single day. That when those people do kind of like lock in and are completely committed to kind of like what you're doing, you treat those people like it's literally gold, because these are the people that you're gonna grow with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just a matter of don't waste time and resources on not your audience, and don't take offense. If someone doesn't like your product, doesn't want to play your product, that's fine. Just move on. And that's all you can do, because when you do, like you said, when you find the people that are in your audience, you take care of them, and you build your platform for those people. So it's that's the the nugget of truth right there. And to not lose interest in what you're doing because you're not seeing a whole lot of quick returns. It's a process. It's a one gaining of a little chunks at a time until you've got a big chunk of people that are playing your game or reading your content. So But with that, we're going to wrap up the show. Make sure you watch Making Picks. Mark will put the link in the show notes. Follow on all social media at StatementGames, and subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching this, click it's StatementGames Inc. and subscribe to the YouTube channel, as well as just make sure you're playing StatementGames.com on desktop or mobile device. With that, see you next week, Mark.
Catch you next week. Yep.